What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Mock Draft Guy YouTube channel. And in today's video, I have a power ranking for the 2024-25 NFL season, of course, for all 32 teams. Now, I figured with training camp just right around the corner at the time of recording, it is July 10th. I believe the earliest training camp starts about in 6 days. July 16th, I think I saw was the earliest training camp. I figured this would be a really good time to give these power rankings out confidently before the season starts, like a preseason power ranking, if you will, because, I don't know how many more signings or trades will really happen before the season really gets going. So I figured that this would be a good time. So this power ranking is a little bit different than just numbers going from 32 to 1. So we will be doing 32 to 1, but I also broke them down into different tiers as well. So the tiers might look a little weird, but after I numbered the teams from 32 all the way down to 1 after I was finished with my rankings, I broke them up into different categories. So the bottom would be playoff shockers, teams that aren't going to make the playoffs. And if they would, it would truly be shocking. And that's from teams 32 to 29. Then we have potential surprise teams, teams that I wouldn't really be all that surprised if they made the playoffs, but you could go, wow, that's a really great season for them. They're 1 or 2 seasons ahead of schedule, and that's 28 to 24. Then we have the playoff hopefuls from 23 to 20, which is like the playoff hopefuls where it's like, this could be our year where we finally break into the playoffs, and if not, it's really not the biggest thing ever. And then we have playoffs expected. So what playoffs expected means is kind of like you're disappointed that you don't make the playoffs at the end of the season. And that's 19 through 13. And then we have Super Bowl hopefuls, 12 to 5. And then, of course, we have favorites from 4 down to 1. So it should be a lot of fun. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Please subscribe if you aren't. We are ramping up production yet again. And that's not only with NFL content for the season. That's, of course, NFL draft and college content. I don't do college football 25 or any of the video games. I wish I did because that seems like so much fun. But yeah, all the kind of college content, everything you're looking for upcoming prospects in the 2025 NFL draft. So if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Let's get into it. All right, so the first tier, as I mentioned before, is the playoff shockers from 32 to 29. And in order of those, we have the Carolina Panthers at 32, the Denver Broncos at 31, the New York Giants at 30, and the New England Patriots at 29. So, I mean, there's really not much that we can say. I'll quickly go over. I'm not going to sit here and talk for 5 minutes about every single team in every single category, but the Carolina Panthers have some work to do to improve from last year. The Carolina Panthers took a weird route to having a franchise quarterback. They traded the farm to get a quarterback, and then just kind of like, well, we have a quarterback, now let's build around him. Where, as you've seen other teams like the Bears, for instance, kind of build the team around the quarterback and then hopefully getting that franchise caliber quarterback as your final piece to start building in the right direction. But Dave Canales was a really good hire. They did really well in free agency. They did well in the draft. So this is a team that is hopeful to do better than the 32nd ranked team in football, but I think that they're still 1, maybe 2 years away, especially with Canales. I think that he could work wonders with Bryce Young, but I think it's a long-term project. I still think they end up being one of the worst teams in the NFL. Respectfully, of course, that's not me saying that they won't play in close games. They're not going to get blown out every single game, but they're a few pieces away and a couple years away for truly contending, in my opinion. Same thing with the Denver Broncos. I really like Bo Nix. I'm not going to lie, and I think that he's going to succeed in the NFL. Sean Payton is whether you like him or you don't, I personally do not. Sean Payton is a very good head coach. He somehow took the Denver Broncos last year to an 8-9 record. I think that with the roster and with a rookie franchise potential quarterback in Bo Nix, I don't know if he'll start right away, but he will definitely play this year, probably early on. You have to think that this team is a little bit less talented than they were last year. They did trade Jerry Jeudy. On the defensive side, not too much to get excited about except for Pat Surtain. They lost Justin. Well, they didn't lose him technically yet. He's still a free agent somehow, but a lot less talent, in my opinion, on this roster than there was last year. So I think that this is another long-term project, and I think Bo Nix is going to turn out to be that guy. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback for the Denver Broncos. I think it's going to be a really rough year for him and Sean Payton together. At 30, I have the New York Giants, and I hated putting the New York Giants here, to be quite honest with you, because as a Jets fan myself, I do not hate the Giants. I don't hate Giants fans at all. I'm relatively neutral towards the franchise. The only time I don't really want to see them win is when they're playing against the New York Jets. So the Giants here are an interesting team because I feel like they have some really good offensive pieces. They have some really good defensive pieces as well. They traded for Brian Burns. They have Deontay Banks, hopefully going into a really big second year as well. Dexter Lawrence, of course, is one of, if not the best interior defensive players in the entire NFL. So there's pieces, but for me, especially the lack of the run game. They signed Devin Singletary to essentially replace Saquon Barkley. They also drafted Tyrone Tracy, which I thought was pretty nice, but Tracy is also on the older side for a workhorse running back as well. I believe he's like 24 or 25 already, or around there, 23, 24, 25, one of those older, me coming as a 27-year-old, one of the older ages for a running back. And, Daniel Jones, I have a strange feeling that we already saw his ceiling a couple seasons ago when he took them to the playoffs. That was certainly a surprise. They won a playoff game. That was also a surprise. I don't think it's going to get any better than that. And to pay all that money for that, to me, I don't think it's going to get the job done. I think the Giants are firmly in the race for the number 1 overall pick next year and to get that franchise quarterback, hopefully. But yeah, the Giants to me are just a weird team that I didn't really want to put this low, but at the same time, I couldn't really justify putting them really any higher than this. And then you have the New England Patriots, for me, are just really, really young. Rookie head coach, rookie quarterback, rookie first and second option wide receivers. On the defensive side, you're getting kind of sort of the same. We saw flashes from Christian Gonzalez before he had an injury that cost him basically his entire rookie season. So I'm hoping he comes on strong this year as well as that defensive leader. There's a lot to like from this team for the future, but this year I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains with Drake May and with those rookie receivers as well. I think they need to get another premium weapon in there for him to truly succeed. And this is a super tough division as well. The Jets, the Dolphins, the Bills are the other 3 teams in this division. So I think that they wind up having a pretty dismal year record-wise, but there's going to be a lot of promise. I firmly believe in Drake May. I think he's going to be fine at the NFL level. I just think it's going to take a lot of growing. Same thing with Gerard Mayo. I think he's going to be a really, really great coach. He's been touted as one of the better defensive minds in football for quite some time now, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time, a year, maybe 2 years, before we really, really, see this new era of New England Patriots football bear any real results. And then moving on to the next tier here, we have potential surprise teams that could surprise a lot of people, maybe even make the playoffs. Wouldn't be totally surprised. So from 28 to 24, we have the Washington Commanders at 28, the Tennessee Titans at 27, the New Orleans Saints at 26, the Arizona Cardinals at 25, and the Seattle Seahawks at 24. Now for the Washington Commanders, I don't want people to get the Houston Texans syndrome. I feel like that was just such an unbelievably rare case that we just never see in the NFL, where a rookie quarterback comes in, has a sparkling rookie year. Tank Dell was phenomenal. DeMeco Ryans was phenomenal as a rookie head coach as well. There were just so many young pieces that clicked all at the right time. Let's not pretend that this is going to happen every single year. I think Jaden Daniels lands in a really nice situation. Dan Quinn was a very sought-after head coaching hire. Adam Peters was very sought after in the front office as well. They got their man in Jaden Daniels. They added some decent pieces on the defensive side. Of course, they added Bobby Wagner as a defensive leader, essentially. That'll help a lot of those young guys out as well. Offensively, they built up the offensive line a little bit better. There's still a lot to look forward for with, Sam Cosmi and guys like that. They added Jerzon Newton on the defensive line. There's a lot to like about this team, which is why I could see them going anywhere from 5-12 to 9-8 and sneaking into the playoffs. I wouldn't be probably out of all the teams that are in this tier at number 28. I think the Washington Commanders would be the team that surprised me the least, just because there is a possibility that we could see that CJ Stroud effect again with Jaden Daniels. I don't think it's likely, but it's certainly possible. And at 27, we have the Tennessee Titans. I liked what I saw in some spurts from Will Levis last year. The Tennessee Titans, what I absolutely love about them, what they did this offseason, was they fully invested in Will Levis as their guy. They cut ties with Ryan Tannehill. They signed a top 10 center. They drafted J.C. Latham. They signed Tyler Boyd. They signed Calvin Ridley. They got him more weapons as well. They signed Tony Pollard with Tajay Spears. Losing Derrick Henry kind of sucks, but this is a more pass-heavy offense, assuming under Brian Callahan. So, there might be some growing pains here and there, but Will Levis really did shine last year. That defense is always going to be in that solid region for me. I'm never going to think that they're going to be elite, but they have some really great pieces. Of course, Jeffrey Simmons being probably the biggest one there. They're always going to be a solid unit. This is a team that if Will Levis gets off to, an incredibly hot start, could see them sneak into the playoffs in an incredibly tough AFC conference. I would be very shocked. It would probably be a 6th or 7th seed. Can't see them winning the division with the competition that they have around them, but the Tennessee Titans have the most boomer bust potential for me for any team in the AFC South. I could see them being 4-13. I could see them being 9-8, even 10-7. So it'll be interesting to see, but that's why I had to kind of put them in this category where you don't really know what you're getting. It really kind of depends on the performance of the defense and how Will Levis develops from his rookie year to his sophomore year. And then, of course, here at number 26, I have the New Orleans Saints. Maybe a little low for a team like the Saints, and I respect that if that's what you think. But this team just does not excite me in any way, shape, or form, to be honest with you. Really, the only two offensive pieces that excite me for the most part are Chris Olave and Kendre Miller. I'm excited to see what they do with him from year 1 to 2. Essentially was a non-factor last year. Same thing with A.T. Perry. Towards the end of the year last year, he started to get a little bit more playing time. These younger guys, I feel like, are going to take over with just they're always in salary cap purgatory. It's really tough for them to maneuver. They have an aging defense. Their offensive line was addressed with Talisi Fuaga. Loved that pick, of course, but their line, to me, is still not in shambles, but it's really not still great. Don't know how great the running game is going to be with an aging Alvin Kamara as well. And, you never know what you're going to get from Dennis Allen, and you never know what you're going to get from Derek Carr. The defense for me is always going to be really good. Like, I feel like the Saints always just, no matter how old their stars are, they just, especially Demario Davis, they consistently get the job done at an all-pro or Pro Bowl level. But this team just doesn't excite me at all. They are they are one of the more mid teams in the NFL for me, where, I feel like they're destined for 8-9, 9-8, regardless of if they have a good year or a down year. They're always going to win some games that they probably shouldn't. They're going to lose some games that they probably shouldn't too. So I couldn't justify really putting them any higher just based off of the last couple of years of performances from the New Orleans Saints. And at 25, I have the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals, for me, were almost teetering on that edge of playoff hopeful because everyone just completely wrote them off last year at the beginning of the year. Kyler Murray was going to be injured at the start of the year. Clayton Tune, or I think it was Colt McCoy or whatever, was going to start. It really, really looked bleak for the most part. But once he came back, they started looking a lot better offensively. And this is a team that added a ton of talent on the offensive side of the football and on the defensive side of the football as well. So this is kind of, in my opinion, really the third, I wouldn't say the second spot in the NFC West is kind of wide open. I feel like it's a 2-horse race at the top between the Rams and the 49ers, but the Arizona Cardinals are a team that I think can surprise most. I think in my record predictions, I even had them at 9-8, which is a lot higher than people thought. But the Arizona Cardinals are a boomer bust team for me. If Kyler can get back to that early career form, they have Marvin Harrison Jr., of course. That's going to be a rapport that I'm really looking forward to seeing. They have Michael Wilson as well, Trey McBride. Like, they got some really nice young offensive pieces. So I'm excited to see what this offense can do. The defense still, of course, needs to work, but they're an improving squad. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people this year. And then the Seattle Seahawks, where, again, Seahawks fans think that I consistently disrespect them, but just hear me out here with a defense. They cut a ton of dead weight for the most part, which was good. They added a stud in Byron Murphy. That was an amazing get for them. Added Mike McDonald as a young, hotshot defensive head coach. I just think this team is going to have to get used to the culture shock. It's a whole new era. Pete Carroll was here for X amount of years. A lot of these players have been here for a long time as well. And also the quarterback situation for me too. I don't know how much I trust Geno Smith. I don't know how much I trust Sam Howell. They both could be terrible. There's a situation where there's a scenario where they could both be terrible, and the Seattle Seahawks are stuck in a 6-11 or 7-10 season. And I think that's what more than likely could happen. Could they gel faster than we think and turn around in a 9-8 or 10-7 season? Absolutely, they can. But in a weaker conference, that could absolutely happen. I just personally don't see it happening right now. So I couldn't really put them in that playoff hopeful, because with a new regime, with some uncertainties at some really, really important positions, especially along the offensive line still, I couldn't put them in the playoff hopeful category. And the next tier here, the playoff hopefuls. From 23 to 20, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, the Minnesota Vikings, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Chicago Bears. The Chargers, for me, I feel like a lot of people are disrespecting them in their power rankings. It's a passing league, and, the weapons don't look great. I get that. But at the same time, they're fully invested in this offensive line and this running game. This is going to be a new look offense with Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman. The defense, I feel like, is going to be so much improved with Jesse Minter as well. This is going to be a team that I think surprises a lot of people, and I think we get to see some of Justin Herbert's best football. So I'm not going to say that they are a lock to make the playoffs, but I think that they would be disappointed if they didn't make the playoffs for the most part. So they weren't quite good enough roster-wise for me to put them in that playoffs expected, where they'd be disappointed entirely if they didn't make it. But with the hires that they made and the players that they drafted, I think they'd be a little disappointed if they didn't make the playoffs at year one in Harbaugh. But I think it's going to take a little bit of time to gel. It's going to take a little bit of time to acclimate to this new offensive style. They're in it for the long run. I think this is going to be a good year for the Los Angeles Chargers. Certainly better than 5-12, even though the roster, to me, doesn't seem like it's better than the roster that they had last year. Of course, losing Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, all those offensive guys, it's not going to be as good on paper. Then you have the Minnesota Vikings here at number 22. And, it really just relies on J.J. McCarthy, because Brian Flores last year, in his first year as a defensive coordinator, made chicken salad out of chicken shit. That was a not inspiring roster on paper on the defensive side of the football, and he turned them into a very, very solid unit. They have more talent in my opinion, on this roster defensively than they did last year. I think they'll be just fine on that side of the ball. It really depends on what Kevin O'Connell, how he develops J.J. McCarthy, what difference he makes in Sam Darnold's game. That's really what it relies on. But I feel like so many people, after Kirk Cousins left, just completely threw this team to the side. They're like, all right, we don't have to worry about the Minnesota Vikings anymore. I don't think that's true at all. I think if J.J. McCarthy can develop, or even Sam Darnold, becomes that perfect game manager that maybe Kevin O'Connell is looking for a bridge quarterback, you still have some incredible offensive weapons. Don't forget, you got T.J. Hawkinson, you have Justin Jefferson, you have Jordan Addison. I mean, come on. Regardless of who's throwing the football, they're going to get one of those guys the football. So I wouldn't write them off just yet. At 21, I have the Las Vegas Raiders, and kind of the same spiel with the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to say the same thing with the Las Vegas Raiders. It really just relies on the development of Aiden O'Connell. They believe in Aiden O'Connell. I wouldn't be surprised if Gardner Minshew got a start here and there, but this is the quarterback tandem that they're rolling with. It's going to be Gardner Minshew. It's going to be Aiden O'Connell. These are guys that I personally think you could win regular season games with in the NFL. I don't know if you could win playoff games with these guys in the NFL, but Aiden O'Connell showed some real flashes last year, then also looked terrible at times. So his development is key, because this roster is really good offensively. They added Brock Bowers. They're kind of loaded on the offensive side. They lost Josh Jacobs, but Zamir White looked really good down the road last year. They add Brock Bowers to an offense that boasts, Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams. They had Michael Mayer already, Trey Tucker. So that's a good-looking offense, in my opinion. Defensively, adding Christian Wilkins was amazing. That defensive line is sneakily one of the best in the NFL, as long as Tyree Wilson can develop from year one to year two. I think that the Raiders would be slightly disappointed if they didn't make the playoffs this year, because they'd essentially be in the same boat that they were last year, because they weren't too far off from the playoffs. But, if you miss the playoffs by one game this year, how much of development is that truly? And then 20, I have the Chicago Bears. And I usually don't like to put teams with rookie quarterbacks this high, but how could you not get excited about the Chicago Bears? Because their roster, to me, is way more loaded than Minnesota, especially on the defensive side of the football. They have in my opinion, a top 10, maybe even a top 8 defensive unit. Offensively, the offensive line got a little better. They didn't really make too much of a splash there. They have Caleb Williams. They have Romo Dunze. They added Keenan Allen. I mean, they added DeAndre Swift. This is going to be a team. This is it. Like, I feel like Caleb Williams has 2 years to prove himself. Of course, rookie season. Now there's a little bit more added pressure for any rookie quarterback that starts, in my opinion, because CJ Stroud was just so good his rookie year. Now I feel like you got to be great from the beginning. It's such a short leash for these top drafted quarterbacks, and rightfully so. I mean, if I'm spending a number 1 overall pick on you, you better turn my franchise around in 3 years max, maybe even 2. So Caleb Williams has a lot on his shoulders. I think he'll do just fine. Hard not to with the offensive weapons that they have. I think they slightly miss out on the playoffs. I think the Chicago Bears go like 9-8 and just miss out on the 7 seed or 6 seed. I'm really excited to see Chicago Bears football, and that's not a sentence I think I've ever uttered in my entire life. All right, with the next tier here, we have disappointed to not make the playoffs, or playoffs certainly expected. And that's from 19 to 13. And at 19, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At 18, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. 17, I have the Atlanta Falcons. 16, I have the Indianapolis Colts. 15, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars. 14, my New York Jets. And 13, we have the Cleveland Browns. So, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are pretty much unchanged for the most part on the offensive side of the football, and really the defensive side, if we're being honest with you. They did add some really nice pieces on the defensive side throughout the draft. So this, to me, is one of the more unchanged rosters in football. So I would say they made the playoffs. They won a playoff game last year. There's no reason why you can't repeat and make the playoffs again. Pittsburgh Steelers were 10-7. Did they make the playoffs last year? I don't even remember, to be quite honest with you. I think they did, right? They definitely made the playoffs. If they were 10-7 last year, they definitely made the playoffs. That's right. They did make the playoffs, and they lost to Buffalo in the wild card round. God, some information really just escapes your mind really, really fast. Of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I should have made a special category for them where it just says expected to go over 500, because every single year they go over 500. I had someone in my comment section the other day tell me that the best bet in football is the Pittsburgh Steelers not being over 500 this year. And I'm just like, dude, you have to remember that they went over 500 with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges playing quarterback for them for the majority of the year. Justin Fields and Russell Wilson looks like Joe Montana and Steve Young compared to those two guys. So, I think other than the weird quarterback situation that we got in Pittsburgh, I wouldn't say weird, it's unique. You got 2 guys that are going to have immense pressure on them to perform, because there's another guy right behind them. There's if Russell Wilson doesn't perform, the fans are going to be clamoring for Justin Fields. Same way, Justin Fields somehow gets the start, they're going to be clamoring for Russell Wilson once he fumbles the ball away or something like that. So the Steelers have I think they had the best draft in the NFL. They completely revamped their offensive line. They got another weapon in Roman Wilson. So this is going to be a really, if Russell Wilson can cook a little bit like he used to, or Justin Fields can, turn that great athleticism into playing like a good quarterback, I think that they would be absolutely remiss if they missed the playoffs. So I think that there's some big expectations on the Steelers this year. At 17, I have the Atlanta Falcons. Pretty straightforward. They added Kirk Cousins. They added Michael Penix Jr. Okay. They still have a good offensive line. They have one of the better defensive units, in my opinion. They added a ton on the defensive line in the draft, which I absolutely loved. A year or 2 of Bijan Robinson and no more Arthur Smith. So you're looking up here. They should make the playoffs. Indianapolis Colts at 16 may be a surprise for some of you guys, but I actually wanted to put them higher. I wanted to put them in front of the Jacksonville Jaguars, but then I remembered a specific stat that I'll mention in a minute. The Indianapolis Colts, Anthony Richardson was really good through 2.5 or 3 games that he played in his career before he got injured for the entire season. Can he stay healthy? That's huge. The Indianapolis Colts didn't do a ton in free agency, but they brought back a ton of players that were free agents. So I love that. They're keeping the core together. They added 2 impact players from day one in the first 2 rounds of the draft. Laiatu Latu is going to be fantastic for that defensive line. And of course, Adonai Mitchell is going to make that passing attack way stronger for Sean Steichen. I think as long as everyone stays healthy, the Indianapolis Colts went 9-8 last year with Gardner Minshew and a ton of injuries. There's no reason why they can't win 11 games this year. Jacksonville, kind of the same thing I said as Indianapolis. once Trevor Lawrence got hurt, the Jacksonville Jaguars were 8-3 when he got hurt, and they missed the playoffs. So think about that. As long as he could stay healthy. Now, is he a $55 million a year quarterback? I don't think so. Can he be a $55 million a year quarterback? He certainly can. And I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are banking off that potential with the contract. And, they certainly added through the draft. Brian Thomas was absolutely huge. They added really nice defensive pieces, Darnell Savage, Eric Armstead through free agency. So this is a team that, again, kind of similar to the Indianapolis Colts, they kept the band together for the most part and just added pieces here and there that will make them better. So the Jacksonville Jaguars, to me, absolutely should be in the race for the playoffs this year, and that's why I have them at 15. And then at 14 here, you have the New York Jets, my favorite team. I couldn't rank them any higher than this. Sure, you could say that they're a Super Bowl hopeful, but when you have the longest playoff drought in the NFL, you're not a Super Bowl hopeful. You're a playoff hopeful. You just want to break the streak. Let's get that through our heads. I get it, Jets fans. We're excited. I'm super excited. This is the best roster I've ever seen the New York Jets have. I'm super excited. I also said the same thing last year when that was the best roster that I ever saw. And then 4 plays into the season, our season was over. So let's relax a little bit. I'll believe it when I see it. When the Jets start to play healthy football and win games and make the playoffs, then maybe they could be Super Bowl hopefuls, but not here. Definitely not here. And it's the same thing for me with the Cleveland Browns. They made the playoffs last year with Joe Flacco. Deshaun Watson has to get back to, he's never going to get back to the heights of the Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson. Maybe they don't have good enough massage parlors in Ohio. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why he's tight before the games a lot. I don't blame him. I really don't. But Deshaun Watson has to get back to playing consistent, good football. This is a super talented team offensively. The offensive line is aging a little bit, and their window is closing with the offensive line, I feel like. But rushing attack, hopefully Nick Chubb comes back and is like 70% of himself, because I really do think he was on a Hall of Fame pace if he just didn't have some devastating injuries along his career. But the rushing attack is still pretty decent. Jerome Ford as well still. Wide receiver wise, they added Jerry Jeudy, which was really nice as well. So I think they got a nice core of wide receivers. David Njoku had a breakout year last year. I'm fully expect him to keep on with that. Defensively, they're really, really good. They added in the draft as well to the defensive side. So this is a team that I think would be really disappointed even in the hardest division in football, with a case where you could make a legitimate argument that all 4 teams in the AFC North can make the playoffs. I think they'd still be disappointed if they missed the playoffs. All right, maybe this is where this gets the most controversial, because as you can see on the bottom there, you know who the favorites are going to be. But going into the Super Bowl hopefuls here, we have the Dallas Cowboys at number 12, the Miami Dolphins at number 11, the Buffalo Bills at number 10, the Green Bay Packers at 9, the LA Rams at 8, the Cincinnati Bengals at 7, the Houston Texans at 6, and the Philadelphia Eagles at 5. So with the Dallas Cowboys, it's pretty much straightforward here. I think this roster lost a lot of talent. Offensive line, they weren't able. They ran into some salary cap misery at literally the worst time. Their offensive line, to me, didn't recover. I love the addition of Cooper Beebe. I think he's going to be fantastic for them. But you could arguably say their offensive line is a lot worse than it has been in recent years. Same thing, the running game is, let's just say it's atrocious. You have Zeke Elliott, Rico Dowell, and Deuce Vaughn as your top 3 options. It's not going to be pretty. They're going to be throwing the football a lot. And that's also the reason why I still think that they're a Super Bowl hopeful, because let's face it, Dak Prescott is one of the best regular season quarterbacks we've seen over the last decade. The guy just consistently puts up fantastic numbers. He's got 7 games of 450-plus passing yards, the most in NFL history. If you guys didn't know that, I just learned that stat yesterday or 2 days ago. Defensively, they're always going to be really good. They added pieces along the defense as well throughout the draft, so I'm not worried about them on the defensive side of the football. I think they're still going to be a Super Bowl hopeful. As long as Dak is their starting quarterback, which is crazy to say, I still think they'll always have the window open to potentially make a Super Bowl. Same thing with, I feel like the Dolphins and the Cowboys are just in the same boat when it comes to being a Super Bowl hopeful. Can Tua get them there? Can the Miami Dolphins play in weather that's like under 60 degrees? Last year, they were completely inept on offense in one of the coldest games that you'll ever see, but the Kansas City Chiefs looked fantastic in that game. So They have to be able to acclimate to, it's crazy to say, they have to be able to acclimate to the weather around them. Game plan has to change as well. I mean, I don't think I saw Tua throw the ball more than 10 yards in that game. So, that's crazy. But I firmly think that Tua is, with the offense that they have around him, he's going to be just fine. Defensively, they added some really nice pieces. And the one thing that I didn't mention about the offense, the offensive line didn't lose as much as we were led to believe. Yes, losing Robert Hunt was a big loss, the biggest loss on that offensive line. But to be fair, paying 5 years, $100 million for a guard is kind of crazy. So I get why they let him walk. They added Jalen Wright, which is really another fantastic, fast player on the offense. Same thing with Malik Washington, a deep sleeper in the 6th round that they added. Defensively, they added Kendall Fuller. They added a couple really nice pieces along the defense. Kendall Fuller and Jalen Ramsey is a cornerback duo that's up there in age, but they're still going to get the job done. I think, and in this division, it's really important with the Jets having Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, with the New England Patriots having 2 young rookie wide receivers, Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, and then you have Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakur, guys like that, Dalton Kincaid on the Buffalo Bills side as well. They have a lot of weapons. It's good to get those defensive players, those defensive backs in there like that. So I'm glad that they added Fuller, even though he is a little bit on the older side. I believe he's 30, turning 31 this year. So hopefully he didn't lose a step. Same thing with the Buffalo Bills. In my opinion, if Josh Allen is your starting quarterback, of course you're going to have a window to make the Super Bowl. It's really tough to get past the AFC Championship game for them, or the AFC divisional round. I get it, but Josh Allen, for me, is one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. As long as you have him on your roster, I think you got a chance. And I don't think that they lost that much. They got rid of a lot of dead weight defensively, too. It was a lot of names that they got rid of, but when you look at production, a lot of the names that they got rid of really didn't produce that much. So I think it was addition by subtraction for a lot of those moves. And I think the Buffalo Bills are just going to be just fine. At number 9, we have the Green Bay Packers, and the Packers are phenomenal. They're a phenomenal young team. They added Josh Jacobs. They added Xavier McKinney on the defensive side. They added nice pieces through the draft. I mean, this team, let's face it, as long as Jordan Love still plays either at the same level as he did last year or an elevated level last year, they are going to be a force to be reckoned with for the next decade. This team is just so young in so many key places. I can't say enough good things about the Green Bay Packers. I think that they're absolutely a Super Bowl hopeful. Same thing with the LA Rams. A lot of people seem to be sleeping on the LA Rams here. This team, because they lost Aaron Donald, granted, might be the best interior defensive player of all time, but they did so much good to build around the fact that they lost Aaron Donald. On the offensive side, they built up the offensive line. Matthew Stafford with time, with Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson, I think they have too. Tyler Higbee, Kyron Williams was fantastic last year. This team's going to be really, really good. I firmly believe that they're going to be great. Adding Tre'Davious White on the defensive side is a low-cost, high-reward move as well. Absolutely love that. And if he gets hurt, I feel like it's no big deal because they played with next to no cornerbacks last year, and they still fared pretty decently. At number 7? It is number 7. I have the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's pretty straightforward. This team is a really good team when Joe Burrow is healthy. He's an elite quarterback, one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL for me personally. Top 5, I should say. Maybe not top 3, but he's an elite quarterback nonetheless. And as long as he can stay healthy, he's going to put them in a position where they can potentially make the Super Bowl. And I have the Houston Texans at number 6. Might be a little high. I might be overhyping them, but I think this is justified. Last year, they ran into a very, very difficult Baltimore Ravens team in the divisional round. I feel like they honestly would have had a better chance against the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round. This team was super young. They added awesome pieces to the defensive side. They added Danielle Hunter on the defensive side. They traded for Stephon Diggs. They had a good draft as well. Any development from CJ Stroud is going to be great. Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Robert Woods. It's just a phenomenal receiving core. Dalton Schultz. They added Cade Stover as well. It's phenomenal. I think they're going to be awesome this year. I can't wait to see what CJ Stroud does in year 2. And then the Philadelphia Eagles, some people might say that this is blasphemous having them in the top 5. How? Last year, defensively, they crumbled. Offensively, they still weren't too great. I get it, but they absolutely crumbled defensively. They added Paris Campbell. They drafted Aeneas Smith as well. They added a third weapon on that offense. They have Dallas Goedert. They have Devonta Smith locked up. They have A.J. Brown locked up. The offensive line, big blow lost with Jason Kelce retiring. Lane Johnson is another year older. Howie Roseman, that's his game, man. Offensive line, defensive line is his game. They went out, they got Bryce Huff. They traded Hassan Reddick. They got younger at the position as well. Defensively, they added, some fantastic defensive backs in the draft. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean as well. I think that they're going to be just fine, and they're going to be firmly at the top of the NFC East again. And then, since you saw it, to nobody's surprise here, the last four, the Super Bowl favorites, if you will, I have the Detroit Lions at number 4, the Baltimore Ravens at number 3, the San Francisco 49ers at number 2, and the Kansas City Chiefs at number 1. The Detroit Lions added, of course, in the offseason, again, through the draft, their first 2 picks. Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw Jr. were fantastic selections. Really, really bolstered the weakest area of their defense. And that was really what I was nitpicking at. They needed to add to the defensive line. They needed to add, to the secondary. And they did just that. Don't forget, a lot of people forget that I believe it is 15 of the, is it 15? It's 14 of the first 15 games of the season for the Detroit Lions are in a dome. Statistically, Jared Goff is one of the best dome quarterbacks in NFL history. That's a big reason why I think they're going to be so good. I mean, they're talented to begin with. They have a phenomenal roster. But at the same time, Jared Goff's a great dome quarterback as well. One of the best records in a dome in the NFL history. I think they're going to be really good. If you like it or not, the Detroit Lions are here to play football under Dan Campbell. They're here to eat some kneecaps or whatever the hell he said a couple years ago. That was insane. He's going to drink his 3 Trenti coffees, and he is going to coach a damn football team to win in Detroit for the first time in God knows how long. At number 3, I have the Baltimore Ravens. Again, another team that I thought had a phenomenal offseason. I think Lamar Jackson getting down to that 205, 210-pound weight is the best version of Lamar Jackson. He carried a little bit more weight the last couple years. I didn't really see the explosiveness that we saw in years past. I think the 2-time MVP is going to be firmly up at the top of the MVP voting again. And really, the one thing is, can he perform when it matters most? Can he get the Baltimore Ravens to the Super Bowl and win? That is really just the biggest question with him. And then 1 and 2 are pretty straightforward. The San Francisco 49ers, the Super Bowl runner-ups last year. Again, I feel like got so much better through the draft, through free agency. Added Devondre Campbell to one of the most unbelievable linebacking cores you're going to see, and a former All-Pro in Devondre Campbell. You have Dre Greenlaw, and then you have Fred Warner as well. I mean, that has got to be one of the most star-studded linebacking cores ever. Secondary always is going to be pretty good. Defensive line, of course, is going to be good. Offensive line is okay. I wish they would have added a little bit more through the draft. Ricky Pearsall, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. It's going to be phenomenal for Brock Purdy. I firmly believe that they're going to be, at the very least, in the NFC Championship game yet again. And then, of course, you have the Kansas City Chiefs, where I need to say nothing because in my power rankings, whether you like it or not, the team that wins the Super Bowl is the best team going into the next season because you're defending your title. You won the Super Bowl. How are you not the best team? I get a lot of people will say that probably the San Francisco 49ers, maybe even the Baltimore Ravens or the Detroit Lions are better on paper. But when you have Patrick Mahomes and when he performed as well as he did with a garbage receiving core last year, the receiving core is way better. Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown added with Rashee Rice, as long as he could, stay under or at the speed limit, that would be tremendous. And if the Kansas City Chiefs could stay out of prison, I think that they'll be a right in there again in the AFC Championship game or even the Super Bowl again. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There are my power rankings for the 2024-25 NFL season. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. And please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I see you in the next one.